So, welcome to this episode of Menopause Conversations. So, we're filming this at the beginning of February, and it's a Monday. And I always used to dread Mondays, but not today because I get to meet my shiro, who is Molly Fenton. Hello, Molly. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I feel like I've been following you around for absolutely ages, and this is the first time we're actually getting to have a semi-real conversation. So it's so lovely to see you. I mean, I would like to get straight into to talk about the amazing person that you are, but I'm going to give a little introduction because Molly is the founder of the Love Your Period campaign, a groundbreaking initiative aimed at normalising conversations around menstruation and advocating for menstrual education. Her work has been absolutely instrumental in challenging stigmas, promoting open dialogue about periods, particularly amongst young people. And Molly's dedication has led her to collaborate with schools, organisations, the Welsh Government, communities far and wide, and very much globally too. But she's done all this whilst having the personal experience of benign brain tumour. You fully fueled your commitment to health advocacy. Like you take everything absolutely in your stride. So it's an honour to have you here today. So welcome to you, Molly.
Thank you. Wow, what an introduction.
So tell us a little bit. I mean, where do you want to start with it all? I mean, how can you tell us? I mean, how does somebody get into something like this? Tell me what was the catalyst for you getting involved in the topic of menstruation and more broadly the Love Your Period campaign?
So I was always very active when I was in school with kind of like school parliament and girls' rights, usually about school skirts. That's where it started, kind of like the big argument that was going on about whether we should have branded school skirts or what we were allowed and what we weren't allowed. So I sat on my school parliament for a number of years. So I was very, very involved. And periods did come up, and we knew that there wasn't a free period product scheme at the time, but teachers were spending their own money having supplies in their own classrooms. And this was brought up to me. So I think that was always in the back of my mind. But whilst this was all going on, I had well, actually, my whole childhood, I had really, really bad hormonal symptoms. My periods were horrific. I started spotting at 5, 6 years old. I was in fully fledged periods by 8, and by 9, I was off school because of painful periods and heavy bleeding. I was heavily bullied for body hair from the age of 7. Everything was really, really early for me. And this kind of like, this is why the girls' rights stuff kind of came up for me. And it was really important. I wanted to champion it on my school parliament. So I kind of like took that part over. And when I was 16, then fast forward a bit, I was sat down and told I had a brain tumor, but it was called a ticking time bomb instead of a brain tumor. So choice wording, but actually those words probably were the catalyst of everything I do today. Those 3 words. And all my puberty symptoms, all my horrific periods and body hair, and all the hormonal stuff made sense. It started to make sense. And as I was experiencing really weird hormonal things, my bone density was really bad. My teeth started crumbling out of my mouth. I lost my periods, all these really, really extreme hormonal symptoms. I realized that we just don't talk about it. And there were so many things that I was too embarrassed to go to see my doctor about, even though I knew this kind of like the severity of the situation. I still didn't want to go, and I still didn't want to bring it up. So the whole idea of Love Your Period was to start a conversation without anyone having to know that I was unwell, or without it having to be about me. It was a general broad thing, and it happened. The first thing I did was some public speaking, and we were the only female team in the district on my debate club, which was the one club I continued after I was told about my brain tumor. And we did is there a correlation between period stigma and period poverty? And our topic was completely frowned upon, and it wasn't appropriate, we were told, which then was like the, oh my gosh, we've got to do something about that, and started an Instagram page. I started an Instagram page, and people in my school were sharing it like crazy, including like all of the boys. And we're talking about 16-year-old boys here in my year group. They were sharing Love Your Periods posts so that more people were following and following and following. And within 3 weeks, I had an email from one of the ministers who was in charge at the time, their secretary, saying, "We'd love to invite you onto the brand new period dignity roundtable that's going to come in place to represent young people." I had no idea the gravity of that. I just rocked up like, "Yeah, hi," until I realized, like, oh, this is this is a proper thing. Oh no. And it literally just snowballed from there. So lots of little things that only now have I realized where it actually came from. But at the time I couldn't have told you I'm doing this because of this. It just
Yeah,
happened.
wow. So I've got two immediate questions I'd like to ask, which is, where do you think that that spirit for speaking openly and challenging, I'd love to know where that comes from. And in terms of, your symptoms then, what was causing that? Was that your tumour causing that? And actually, how has that sort of manifested more latterly? Then do you still continue to have those problems? So really, where is that driving force, to speak about things? And then, what are you experiencing now?
So number one, I think a lot of the work I do, I'd call empathetic activism because I've been there, sat, experiencing these things, lying in bed at night thinking, oh my gosh, I should probably call the GP when it opens tomorrow to book an appointment. Then stood over the phone waiting at 1 minute to 8 to phone them and then giving in and not phoning them because I was too embarrassed. And that made me realize, you can't take your health for granted. And the fact that despite everything that had happened, I was still willing to let an issue that was affecting my quality of life continue simply because I was embarrassed wasn't okay. And if I was like that, I'm very lucky. My mum's so supportive. I've got a great family. Um, if we didn't have any discussions about periods and I didn't actually learn about it in school, I must have missed the day that they did like the 20-minute chat because everyone talks about the 20-minute chat. And I brought it up in my TEDx talk that I did on period stigma because you only have like a 20-minute gap where just the girls go in one room and come out pretty traumatized by everything
Yeah.
they'd learned. But I missed that. I missed all of that. So I didn't feel able to go to my mum about it really. And I didn't want to go to the doctors. And it made me realize that if in a privileged position, which I am, felt still unable to talk about it, then I'm not the only one. And no period should be affecting someone's quality of life and lowering it. So that's probably the drive, is the empathy and the experience of that, but also the people I get to work with. So, I could have done this for 6 months and then given it up.
Mm.
The fact that we're almost 6 years on, next month it's 6 years old, is crazy that we've continued it. But the people I get to work with and the volunteers worldwide are phenomenal. And collectively they teach me, they run it, they tell me, I get the credit and I just make sure that everyone knows that it's them, because we've got people with menstrual health conditions, people with menopause, people post-menopause who say actually it's not over and you've got to know that as well. Sexual health, LGBTQ plus, everyone from every sort of corner of life is coming in and sharing their experience and talking about it, and you learn so much from that. So they definitely are the biggest drive. And then the second part of your question, so all of the my puberty was very much sped up by my brain tumor, and then any sort of like vision issues and migraines, that's what you get when you have periods,
Mm.
or extreme ones. That's what you get when you have puberty. So it's really, really difficult to understand for anyone what's going on. So that fast in puberty was what came to it. And then obviously when you have one health issue, that can snowball into so many other health issues that are just a bit of a nightmare. So I talk about the brain tumor and I keep it at that, and then try and like talk generally about living with illness, because you don't just have one thing, unfortunately, with these things. And my hormones have always been an underlying issue, which kind of like the bone density and stuff, we associate those things with menopause, the
Mm.
hormones lower and therefore these things happen. And that happened for me from, well, it was about 18 years old, and it's, I'm still having an issue now. I had to pay a fortune at the dentist last week because my teeth are just cracking and crumbling. So it's a bit of a nightmare, but that's why I'm documenting it, because I don't have the answers. There aren't any answers, and it really, really sucks. And there doesn't have to be a but after that. So again, I'm kind of using the privileged position, one, to have the platform that I've built. I worked really, really hard to build it, but it's still a privilege to have. But also because I'm safe to use my voice, and I wasn't always. And if my voice wasn't safe to use, then there's got to be loads of other young people. And again, no one questions that I'm from. I say, where were you born? I say Wales, United Kingdom. Someone looks at me and doesn't question that. There are lots of people that are questioned when they say that, and that's not the only issue that comes up. So it's really important that I'm using that privilege again to try and open up some of these conversations and try and make sure that people know where they can get help, and where they can get support to make things happen. So that kind of answers one and two, actually, because
Mm.
it's a massive driving point. The fact that there was a time where I couldn't really use my voice, or it wasn't listened to, despite no one questioning me because of my skin color or my hair or my heritage, nothing like that, then it really worries me about what could be going on for other people.
Yes, definitely. I mean, that was my personal experience of being like negatively biased because of my age. I was perimenopausal at 36, 2 years after having my daughter, and I became postmenopausal 16 years later. And because I'm Asian origin, I live in a very, very white demographic in Middle Devon. So I definitely understand that whole like your voice isn't powerful enough. Doesn't matter how many times you present yourself, if you're not going to be listened to. And then if on your medical notes that there are biases in the form of coding, every medical professional I then spoke to, it was almost like they'd been got to before I had the chance to speak to them. So I do really resonate with everything you're saying there. And it's worrying, when we think in 2025, there are so many of these environments that we go into and we think we'll be listened to, and we won't. So it does condition us not to speak up for ourselves. So it is amazing that you're doing that. So am I right in saying though you're not in one of the stages of menopause then, but you are experiencing dramatic fluctuations with your hormones,
Yeah,
which
so I lost my period about 6 years ago now. Um, at first, I was celebrating.
white
little
genes, white genes.
little did I know what came with that. So of course, like the bone density, blood results, because this is the thing when we think of hormones,
Mm.
we're like, oh, we're not going to talk about it because it's sex hormones and gynecological, but that's not the case. And the amount of people that get so surprised when you talk about your pituitary gland in your brain and how that's the home of the hormones. They're like, what, in your brain? I'm like, yeah, men have hormones too. We have to talk about that. Or it doesn't matter your gender, you've got hormones. And you're like, what? I'm like, yeah. Um, yeah, and it's fascinating. So
Yeah.
it's
So
really
that
important to talk about it.
so for you, it's just you're being managed in that way. I would imagine making sure your bone density is okay to make sure that you are get laying down new bone. And this is one of the things that we talk about, particularly in, when people don't have their period. And we always say during our workplace sessions, Molly, that, if you know a young person who hasn't started menstruating yet, that's a red flag. We must really talk about that. And so many people go quite wide-eyed when we say that. It's like, what? So it's not normal. It's like, no, we need to investigate that. So, test and check all of those sorts of things. So let's talk a little bit more then about, how your communities benefit from you. You undoubtedly will have had massive impacts on your community. I mean, I'll say straight up that the Prime Minister gave you a Point of Light Award in 2021, and you had the St David's Young Person Award in the same year. Your work, I know you're incredibly humble, but it obviously is changing hearts, minds, and day-to-day experience of people. So tell us a little bit more about the impact on communities. Do you have any like really sort of resonating stories that you can share with us, or even in your educational collaborations?
Gosh, well, where to start? So, volunteers that come to Love Your Period are amazing people that do their own work in their own right. And we make sure that that stays how it is. Because when I first started Love Your Period, I think it was a bit, I don't want to say naive, but naive, um, to kind of like the way that some organizations work. And I was going in, especially with my sister. My sister was my main carer, and Tilly, she's 5 years younger than me. So at the time, she was 12. And she'd come with me and she'd do a lot of this work with me. And the amount of times that, looking back now, it was being exploited 100%. And I didn't agree with how it worked at all. So I thought, I'm going to have to take a sacrifice and not rely on some of these larger organizations to get somewhere. And I was like, oh, we can do it. Survived a brain tumor. I can do anything. I'm alive, you know? How hard can it really be?
Yeah, yeah.
So people can come and do their work in their own right. And the reason they've come to us because they've experienced something really, really bad or difficult. And there are a few stories, all of which I have permission to share anonymously, of volunteers that are now really high up in Love Your Period. And I remember someone came to collect period products. I've got a shed outside my house. My parents love me, full of period products.
Yes.
Filled with every period product possible. So every now and then I have to go and really climb in to get stuff. And yeah, quite literally. That's what my bedroom used to be like. I thought it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
unsustainable, so it went in the shed.
I can so see it now. Like, get your knee up on a box and get over and get another box.
I know I might have to make some content on it. It's quite funny, actually. So she came to the house and to get free period products now back in early 2023. Bearing in mind the free period product schemes were put in place in 2019. And she was sitting her A levels, and we got talking because I kind of knew her, but knew of her, and she knew of me. So how have you been getting by? Because she was explaining that she'd gone for ages and ages without asking for products, and felt like she wouldn't be able to get them. And I was like, the products are here for everyone. I'm never going to question you. She said that she'd been using her socks for when she's on her period, because her periods get so heavy that she ties socks to like sit her A-level exams. And as she said it, when she said it out loud, she burst into tears because she was like, why on earth did I do that? That's the most stupid thing I've ever done. And she kind of realized that when she said it out loud, she realized that that was really, really bad. She's a smart student. She wanted to go on and study medicine, which she now is. But she didn't put two and two together because she was never able to say it out loud or talk to it with anyone. So it was kind of like for her to keep. So she never kind of saw it in black and white in front of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was devastated and took period. So I said to her, do you know that this scheme is available? Your school have them? She said, no, I've never heard of it. And the school had period products for 4 years, and this is a massive issue we're having. They are not advertised anywhere. So she went away with products, and then that night messaged me and said, what can I do and how can I do it? And then joined Love Your Period, and now is a fantastic and very active, even more active than me, campaigner, doing the work across Cardiff and wider Wales and wider UK. So that one's the one that stuck with me most.
Yeah.
But there are so many, and we get so many messages of people so emotional and thankful. And when you think about it, it literally is a piece of material, and that's how much of an impact it can have on someone's life. Even though that's a really positive response, it's also really worrying that we get to that point, and really worrying products are flying out so quickly. So that's probably the best story there. And we do get to partner with some great organisations. I Rise International are potentially one of my favourite. We get to work with who are very genuine and youth-led, but we've kind of stepped back from most of them. And then in Wales, we've got Days for Girls UK, because our new UK coordinator is Welsh and lives pretty much up the road from me.
Oh.
So we do I know, handy, Project Mislif Hapus, which in English translation is Happy Period Project. And at Christmas, we took all these packs that had all the reusable pads, menstrual cups, plastic-free tampons, plastic-free pads, every product you can find, all put in a really nice bag. And then you could take that. We took those all the way up into the South Wales Valley. So we drive to about an hour outside of Cardiff, because everything happens in the capital city. And we wanted to make sure we didn't do that. So we started this trial, 200 kits gone, 20,000 steps later. I was exhausted, but it was worth it. And Dalith, who did it with me. The whole idea is Days for Girls, and they kind of sew their own pads. And their typical demographic is older retired women. And Love Your Periods demographic is a bunch of young people that are messing around and have no idea what they're doing, but having fun whilst doing it. And, a very diverse group that, many of them are kind of like, I am being in this room and I am sitting at this table because I've had enough. And therefore, it's not my job then to sit at that table. It's they can take that. And if they need me alongside them, I will sit alongside them. But we've got some fantastic advocates in their different communities. So bringing the two demographics together has been so interesting. And a game changer, I think. So that's probably our favorite community partnership. And then it'd be nicer, I think, if more charities and organizations could come together and instead of seeing each other as competition, really actually work together, because that's the only time we're going to have impact. So there's some great educational tools, there's great schemes giving out products. But the amount of times kind of like you have an email or a message from a charity or organization going, we hear you're doing a period product bank. Did you know that we came up with this idea? And I'm just thinking, surely all that matters is that we're getting these products out. That's all that matters. It's just a table with some period products on. So yeah, I'm very unpopular for saying that all the time, but I really do think we're going to have a massive problem, especially with the way the world's going, if we don't collaborate more. So hopefully I'll have more lovely community partnerships not long to tell everyone about. But at the moment, it's really tricky. It's really, really, really tricky. And this activism work, it's not positive because we're only activists when there's an issue. However, we want it to be the nicest and most inclusive space possible, where people feel safe, that they have a community and a space, even if it's one small room where they feel like their voice is valid and can be used. So I really, really want to make sure that kind of like all my friends, and we're doing this all together, are kind of safeguarded from that, I guess, because it's not nice to be in a room with some of these big guns and you realize it's probably why things are getting worse. Yeah. And that's all I'll say on that matter before I have another charity email me.
Well, sadly, I mean, I agree with you. I think it was Dame Leslie Regan who said, you can either, if you're going to go on your own, you might go faster, but if we go together, we'll go further.
Yeah.
And I do like that. And I'm the same as you. I think we have to question the integrity of anyone who says you're encroaching on my boundary in this topic, because actually there is more than enough work to be done, that we could do so much more and benefit so many more communities, keep people in school learning. I mean, the statistics around people missing school because of periods is just awful. It's almost like you only miss one lesson or a couple of hours of something, you're on the back foot immediately, and it is about bringing it into that consciousness that let's not make it about, it's not about the commercialism of it. It's about just doing the right thing, isn't it? It's about doing the right thing. Menstrual blood is just another bodily fluid. So let's help people manage that wherever they find themselves so that they're not at disadvantage. So yeah, I align myself with what you're saying too, because we get a lot of pushback in the menopause space too, around accreditation. You're not any good unless you're an accredited program. I don't agree with that, quite honestly. I think if you're keeping people in work, it's working. Do you know what I mean? So I sort of hear you very much on that. So let's move on then before we both get a bit of a bashing on that. I don't mind that. Tell us about then breaking the stigma. Can you I know it's a loaded question and we've done no prep before today's interview. What is at the root of the stigma, do you believe? And is it multifaceted? When we think between genders, like you say, we're both privileged people. What is the stigma? Where does it emanate from? And is it like a wriggly old octopus? Is there more to it than what we actually understand?
In my personal opinion, I don't think we can pinpoint it on one thing, and we will never be able to pinpoint all of the reasons. The taboos, misconceptions, all of this would have been around before any of us on Earth today were on Earth. And it's very long, it's very deep. It differs, I think. It can differ between, there may be some underlying similarities, but between topics and in different communities, I think different things matter. And I think when we talk about stigma, some people go, oh, there's this myth. Oh, that's ridiculous. Why would anyone think that? But for another community, that's very deep rooted in their belief. So sometimes the way we go about stigma can make things worse as well. So it's walking on eggshells, I think. And it's trying to work out where we can do things and how we can do it. As you say, it is a very deep thing. I reckon we could speak all day and try and work it out and still probably not have any answers on it. But I think stigma that we hold within ourselves. So let's say, my sister is so open about talking about periods. Um, well, I wouldn't say she's too open, but my mum and everyone else would in the house. And she'll come down and she'll be like, yep, Monday too. This many blood clots. She'd tell the world. She would tell the world. And I think that's great. I think it's
Yeah,
absolutely
I like that. I
fantastic.
like that. There's nothing off the
Yeah,
limits.
she's brilliant. And I feel really, really glad that she feels able to come in and say that to her older sister and her mum. I think it's fantastic. Not just us, she says it to
Yeah,
everyone everywhere.
yeah.
Um, so, but for me, when I was on my period, and I imagine probably be similar now, um, I was very like, it's got to be hidden. Even though I kind of like started the campaigning and I'd started talking about it before I'd lost my period now, I was like, oh yeah, we don't need to talk about it. Or if I thought something was off, because my periods were drastically changing before they disappeared, I didn't ask my mum about it because I was like, you're not supposed to talk about it. So I feel like there's a level of stigma society holds and different community holds, but then there's also some within ourselves that could potentially be changed. And I think I only realized that meeting other activists that are now part of Love Your Period, pretty much the young activists that come in and kind of challenge some massive norms that have many more barriers than I do.
Mm.
Um, and they go, yeah, but if I believe it and I can do this, I can try and help someone else. And they're like, yeah, but this is a safe way that I can do it. And this is what makes me think about all these things because you learn from other people, don't you? That's
Mm.
not something that I'll ever be able to put myself in their shoes, but I can learn directly from them. Um, for again, it's this privilege thing, isn't it? It's
Mm.
learning from other people. So that's what made me realize that actually there is something we hold within ourselves that only we can challenge. Um, I was the same with my brain tumor. I was really embarrassed. I didn't want to tell people. I have no idea why. I went for years and no one knew I had a brain tumor. I just hid away. I hid away as if you'd be able to see it on the outside of my head, like a massive
Yeah.
thing. Because I was really embarrassed by it. And I thought it was my fault or I'd done something. And that again, it's a stigmatized topic and ill health. And, I was too young to be sick or um, it was caused by me being on my phone too much or, something like that goes around. So I think challenging some of that from within ourselves, and I assume that anyone that would be listening to this is someone that has the ability and the space to be able to do that and the voice to be able to do that. So how do we challenge it within ourselves to then affect everything around us? And that's going to look different for different people. And the process is going to be different for different people. And yeah, I think the pinpoint, some people may be able to go, I was embarrassed about this when this happened. I was 5 years old and I saw a tampon in the bathroom and I asked my mum what it was and she snatched it out of my hand and we never spoke about it again. I've heard that before. But then for others, like me, I could not tell you where the embarrassment came from. No one ever told me periods were wrong. No one ever told me I
No,
shouldn't talk about them. It
no.
just was inflicted. So how do we make sure that that energy that we have as adults, no matter our age, um, or developing people in society or activists that kind of like do hold a platform, we kind of have a moral duty to ensure that we're not projecting that energy out onto people. And I think that's not how fixing it. This is as long as we can imagine. So fixing it isn't going to take 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, but a place to start now is these young people walking around that don't think there's anything wrong with them and don't realize that their gender means anything at the moment. We try and empower them as much as possible before they start believing that they're weaker, or they're not as important, or menstruation's a bad thing, and if they struggle with it, that it's their fault, or they can't ask for help, things like that. And they know their kind of like know their rights, but not in a really deep way. We can do that really fun. We don't need to get a 3D pelvis out and do all the gynecological anatomy, but kind of like big sister conversation. That's what I wanted Love Your Period to be like, to be able to sit down, because even in some of those waiting rooms, if I'd spoken to someone in the waiting room of the hospital about an issue, I feel like it probably would have made a massive difference to me, because you feel seen and you feel heard, and I'm so involved
Exactly.
now. So it's meeting
Exactly.
people.
Yeah. And it's so lovely because only this morning I was seeing a client for a one-to-one talk about menopause, actually. And I honestly say to people, I will carry all the embarrassment that you might be feeling, because I'm going to show you a 3D model of a vulva and vagina. And I honestly, like, I'm like your sister. I reckon you, me and your sister have a great time, because it would probably be the most outrageous thing we could say to each other and like not crack. Because I really, honestly, because I would rather that someone understood and could then do something with that. And I've yet to find someone who didn't find it helpful. They've just said, "Oh God, I really didn't know that." And when we think about people who maybe have things like lichen sclerosis because there's an estrogen deficiency in their intimate area, or people find it uncomfortable to put in, let alone take out a tampon because they've got a degree of vaginal atrophy. It's like, you don't need to suffer, because I definitely have been that person who didn't tell anyone and stopped telling anyone because it was obvious to me they didn't want to listen. So, we've got also great people like Dr. Aziza Sasay, Nigat Arif, who are making it. I've got the knowledge here on my desk because, we've got great anatomical diagrams that if you are a black or Asian person, you'll see an anatomical drawing that makes you look like you. These are really, really powerful messages. And so I think you're right. If we had more conversation, more time, not just a 20-minute PHSE lesson about it and people coming out looking traumatized, I think it would be better to have those conversations. So I love the idea of a big sister conversation. I mean, I'm always very popular I think most people in my family think I'm a doctor, which I'm not, but they talk to me as if I am. What do you think about X and Y? And culturally, I also like what you said there too, because in Sri Lankan culture, it is very much celebrated when you become a woman. So when you get your first period, it's like real over the top celebrating. And yet, when I started to have erratic periods, my mum was horrified. She went, "Why are you telling people that?" Because on the other end of the spectrum, there's some sort of question around your fertility and your place in the world. And so when my daughter's 19 now, but when she was first curious, like she was like, "Mummy, what are these things in the bathroom?" I was like, "Let's play a game." And I can actually remember getting food dye and showing her how quickly each of the tampon sizes sort of swelled up. And she was fascinated by it. Loads of questions, like loads and loads and loads of questions. But I think that's almost the thing, isn't it? We need to help people find that safe space where they can explore. Some people might not want to ask any questions, but they just want to hear something being said. So it's brilliant that you're doing that. And like you say, it's going to take time. So tell us about some of the things that you're involved in coming up. What are you involved in coming up? I would love you to tell us a little bit about the Every Woman Festival. But tell us about some of the exciting things you've got coming up.
So I'm currently a young ambassador for the Brain Tumor Charity. They do 2-year cohorts, so I'm the 2024 to 2026. I'm the first Welsh young ambassador they've ever had.
Wow. So the Brain Tumor Trust.
Brain Tumor Charity.
Shoot, trauma charity.
Yeah,
Okay,
there are
wonderful.
many. There are
Yeah,
many
okay. So
charities.
you've got you start your tenure with them, right? So so
Um,
so what are you doing with them?
so March is Brain Tumor Awareness Month, and my whole idea is to try and bring the presence of the charity to Wales. When I was diagnosed, and then through many years, I didn't know what the Brain Tumor Charity was. They provide all day, every day well, Monday to Friday, emotional support, emotional support, and like free counselling for anyone involved, and financial advice, and all sorts. And I was never told about it. And obviously, NHS England and NHS Wales are two different things. Health is a devolved matter in Wales, as is education. And therefore, there is a big gap. And with many charities and organisations, same with the period ones, they say, you know, we're a UK charity, 98% England charity, that sometimes means. So the Brain Tumor Charity have been amazing. I've said, you know, I want to do stuff. So we're going to hold an event inside the Senedd. We're going to have all our members of Senedd involved. I'm going to come to London to do the Twilight Walk they do every year to
Wonderful.
Raise money. And then I'm doing one in hosting one in Cardiff the next week. I don't know who's putting me in charge. And then like we're going to Parliament next week to talk more about the Tessa Jowell Foundation, set up for brain tumor research.
Wow.
All sorts of things with them. So that's I love that one. I love that little bit. Obviously, they're running around with period products and doing all the on the ground stuff that I don't usually have time to take a photo and put it on LinkedIn, because it's kind of a case of just do and get it out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that works great. The Every Woman Festival, which is like, it keeps me going. It's literally my big thing. If I'm having a sad day, I'm just like, it's this many days until Every Woman. So this is the third year it's running. The Every Woman Festival is a women's health festival set up by an NHS colorectal consultant, Mrs. Julie Cornish. And the whole idea is to empower, educate, and support / signpost women and girls and people assigned female at birth to whatever they need, with whatever they need. I'm a very proud ambassador of the festival. I'm really glad to be asked to be an ambassador to kind of represent that idea of young women needing to know about their health, even if they don't have a problem, because prevention is key. And if we know about our bodies, then that's excellent. So Every Woman is on the 7th of June this year. At Insel Court in Cardiff. So this is the first time that I'm not actually having to travel to
on your doorstep.
It literally is like, oh, it's brilliant not having to fight the trains to London. It's 10 out of 10. And it's nice to kind of like have an event that isn't London based.
Definitely.
Or, you know, even like places like Manchester, they hold a few. It's nice to try and bring it out and reach a community that wouldn't get to these events. So that's really good. Trying to think if there's anyone else that I work with, to be honest. I don't think there is. There probably is.
You've got a podcast. You've got your
Yes. I started a podcast with my friend Mel, who is also a young ambassador for the Brain Tumor Charity. We both live with low-grade gliomas, which is a type of brain tumor. And so we called it the Glio Babes.
I know, I love that.
We've just launched it and I am loving it so much. We're learning as we go. We have a laugh at like 2:00 in the morning trying to edit it. No idea what we're doing. Well, Mel's good. I'm a mess. So it's fantastic. But Mel lives in Liverpool and we connected online ages before becoming young ambassadors, but we never reached out to one another. I was too scared to reach out to her. And on my train to get to the first young ambassador meetup, I was checking her online profiles, her social media, to check if she'd signed up and been one, and I couldn't see anything. And it turns out she was doing the same thing to me on the train. And we went in and eventually we saw each other. She was like, Mol, and I was like, Mel. So then it's always been like Mel and Mol, the duo. So
lovely. That's got a very nice ring to it.
And again, it's stigmas, because you know there's so many. So when we think of everything that applies in periods, it applies across all sorts of health topics, even ones that are widely spoken about. There are still so many underlying stigmas and even outside issues, because when we think of periods being a problem, we think, oh, well, that's just one area of your body and one little issue, but that's not the case. It can affect your social life, your mental well-being, all sorts, absolutely everything. And it's the same with brain tumors. You know, you have an issue and not only does the rest of your body suffer, but financially you may not be able to work, relationship breakdowns, friendship breakdowns, grieving your friends. Young people, there's this massive misconception that we bounce back. That's not always the case. And, you know, unfortunately, when you put yourselves in these communities, it's a double-edged sword because you find people that understand and people that you feel like you connect with, but then there's always the risk that you're going to lose them. So we try and have those really difficult conversations in this podcast whilst making it funny. It is a bit funny. Episode 2 got a little bit deep, but we made sure we've made some jokes. That's good. But episode 1 was just hilarious. So really picking up on those stigmas again. And, you know, the same with all the menopause conversations, all these women's health conversations. We're all affected by women's health, aren't we? Because we either know a woman whose health then affects things in the outer life. And it doesn't, the word affects doesn't always mean negative, but if something changes, then, you know, we just all need to know about it. And we have to have these tough conversations that shouldn't be tough, but they are. And that's okay. It's not anyone's fault. But as society, we can try and work together to dismantle this.
Yeah, I love that because I wish I know what I knew now. I wish I'd known that. You know, I wish I'd questioned. My mum was an orthopedic nurse, Molly. So she used to come back and my mum would flood. She'd have a crisp white nurse's uniform on. You know, and I can remember my mum being in hospital having blood transfusions. I mean, I cared, but I never questioned. You know, I think those two things are very, very different. And so you're right. And, you know we can't talk about menopause in the work that we do without talking about menstruation because menstrual flooding, that was the worst symptom for me. I mean, I was housebound because of my menstrual bleeding. And I can just remember someone saying to me, I think you're a bit stressed, you need a holiday. Yeah, and like more period products. You know, so the reality is I agree with you. I think it affects our psyche massively, in ways that we probably don't connect the dots on, you know. So that is a really powerful message. And so if you were to say, like, with your wise owl head on, what one thing could everyone listening to this podcast do to either amplify the conversation about their period, about menstrual health, about general health? What one thing do you think we could all go away with as a result of listening to this? What could we do that is manageable and within our reach?
Look at the stigma from inside yourself and understand whilst tackling that you do have a voice and no one needs to give it to you. It's just working out where that safe space can be. And then for anyone listening who does use their voice and is trying to work out how to do more or maybe engage more young people, we have to work cross generation for this. Instead of thinking of giving young people a voice, I hear this phrase all the time. It really, really gets to me. We've got one. It's just not always safe to use. Work on facilitating the safe spaces, not just for young people, but all people, so that people can use their voice, whether it is to talk about their own experience or to get wider into activism. Yeah, so there's it from two different
Oh,
angles.
I love that. And I once remembered hearing about, I hearing Meghan Markle say something broadly similar, which is people saying, oh, you know, we need to give women a voice. She went, no, no, can I just stop you there? Women have a voice. We need to create platforms where women can actually use their voices. And I think it tips into really what something that we know in the workplaces, which is psychological safety as well. You know, organizations need to create spaces and groups for people to have these conversations. And it's so, so powerful. My goodness, that is a lovely thing to sort of finish on. I mean, from my point of view, it's been an absolute pleasure because you are paving the way for a more inclusive society. I mean, you know, my husband wouldn't think twice about going to a shop when I was having a period and buying me menstrual products. He really wouldn't. And I think younger people are opening up these conversations, but like you say, there are still pockets of silence. So we need to get to that. So I'm going to ask you for your socials to put in the show notes. But if people, for example, I'm sure there'd be people going, hang on a minute, she said intergenerational there. So I'm an older person. I could facilitate something. How can people get more involved with the work that you do, Molly?
Good question. I'd say so. Reaching out on social media is probably our main thing.
Yeah.
So we're on Instagram at Love Your Period, and I'm on Instagram at Molly Fenton. Same with Facebook, same with TikTok. We're on X currently. We
Yeah.
have opened a Blue Sky, all the same name. Really, really helpful for everyone. So me and Love Your Period and LinkedIn, of course, very
Yes.
important one. And then we have an email as well, loveyourperiodcampaign@gmail.com, that anyone can contact and get through to. Obviously, that's we do need to
Wow.
do things properly. These are all the platforms we've tried to get through to at the moment. But yeah, there is space for everyone, and we're hoping that we can get some sort of middle ground with this project Miss Lift Happiness we're doing to try and open that up wider to people of society that maybe don't use social media, and aren't very online, and make sure that they know that they can get involved if they want to, whether that's sewing some pads in their spare time or joining me for 20,000 steps. I don't mind. I'm not very
Yeah, tell
firm
us.
at the
I
end of
mean, do
it.
you have the dates offhand for that, or can we put them in the show notes? Could you send them to me? Do you know when?
We don't know when we're doing it yet, but there will be multiple times a year.
Oh, because I
So
would
that's
definitely
good.
love to. I'd definitely love to take part. That would be right up my street. And just before you finish, what was it like to do a TEDx talk?
Oh my gosh, it's not for the faint-hearted. My word, the process was the best thing I'd ever done. At the time, my sleep deprivation and tears wouldn't have said so. But, I had a fantastic coach, fantastic team. The actual TEDx talk itself, again, was scarier than having an MRI scan, to be honest, or any brain tumor appointment. Um, but yeah, life changing, absolutely life changing, and I've come away with incredible training and skills that are going to shape me, and a great community. I got to
Yeah.
meet so many people. So yeah, you know, be prepared. It's not easy, but it's very rewarding.
It sounds like whenever I say people who've written a book, they went, "Oh my God, give yourself 6 months. Don't do anything else." You're sort of like that. You're like that. You go, right, okay, whoa, 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 whoa. You
Yeah.
know, so and I'll put that in the show notes as well, so people can watch that. But thank you so much for giving me your time. I know how incredibly busy you are. It's such a wonderful thing that you're doing, and it needed to be done. And I can't think of anyone better to have pulled it by the reins, taken control of it, and Wales are right to be proud of you. And across the world, you are changing things for the better. So, Molly Fenton, for now, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.